There is so much going on in the world of podcasting right now. There's new AI tools every day. Apple Podcast is launching video. There's so many new strategies. What even is a podcast anymore, right? There's so many new things going on. And that's exactly what I'm sitting down with Chris Creary today to talk all about podcasting. Chris is a fellow podcast producer and the host of the podcast I Made a Podcast and the Faith Flight podcast. And so we're talking all about our views on AI, how it can be incorporated, podcast strategies, clips, and really how we manage so many people's podcasts without burning out. So you can also learn from that too. If you're thinking about starting a podcast, or you are a podcaster, or you're just curious what podcast producers do in their business, this is an amazing episode for you to listen to. It's full of practical tips and real advice from both of us because although we do the same thing, I feel like we have different views on a few parts of podcasting, which I love hearing other people's perspectives because there's not just one way to podcast. So please enjoy this episode with my friend Chris. Welcome to the Podcast Cafe, where we're serving up everything you need to know about podcasting, from tips, stories, and strategies for podcasters from podcasters. I'm your host, Haley Hayhurst, the founder of Espresso Podcast Production, a full-service podcast agency helping business owners, creatives, and thought leaders launch and grow their shows. Whether you're just starting out or want to take your podcast to the next level, this is the place for you. Each week, we'll dive into practical tips, actionable strategies, and of course, stories from other podcasters so that you can build up a podcast that you love and that works for your business. So grab your coffee, get comfortable, and let's get started. Welcome to the Podcast Cafe. Hey, Chris, thank you for joining me in the Podcast Cafe. I'm so excited for you to be here with me.
Hey, Haley, how's it going? It's good to be here.
I know, it's been a while since we caught up. I was recently on your podcast called I Made a Podcast. You also have another podcast called Faith Flight Podcast. We're going to get into both of those today. But before we start with those, I have to know, since we are in the Podcast Cafe, what is your go-to coffee order?
All right, you're probably going to hate me or kick me off the podcast now because I don't drink coffee at all.
What do you drink instead?
Water, that's it. I mean, well, I like tea, but like the
Right.
very smell of coffee, like it kind of makes me nauseous. So I kind of stay away from it like completely. Like sometimes when I'm sitting down talking to people and they have a cup of coffee, I have to literally like move myself a little further away so I don't like smell it. Like,
Yeah.
so please don't end the interview right now. I
I'll
promise
let
you it's
stay.
going to
I'll
be
let
good.
stay.
You let me stay? Okay, great. Yeah. But you know what? I do like some tea. I would drink any type of tea, peppermint tea, black tea, any type of tea. But coffee, I kind of like stay away from completely just because of how the smell. There's something about the smell of coffee that
Okay.
I just doesn't vibe with me. So I kind of stay away
No,
from it completely.
that's fair. I just celebrated 5 years in my business, and since my business is espresso podcast production, I got candles made from this Seattle candle company that were coffee scented. So you would have been running far away from,
Yeah,
from
absolutely.
this.
Oh
But
boy.
I think they smell amazing. So
Hey, if it works for you, it works for you. That's good.
exactly right. Cool. Well, I'll let you stay because you're a big podcast fan and you're a podcast producer, and we have a lot of similarities in what we do. But I'm really excited for you to share your point of views, your expertise with the audience today because, there's more than one way to podcast, right? The way I do podcasting isn't the only right way. So I think it's
Right.
going to be really a good conversation to hear about your point of view. So why
hmm
don't you start off by telling us how you got into podcasting in the first place?
Oh wow. So yeah, I mean, it was a big aha moment for me. It's a long story, but I'll try to condense it and make it as concise as possible. I do have a podcast called the Faith Fight Podcast, and that was my first podcast I started, I think, in 2018, and it's a faith-based podcast. I'm a Christian, and one of my things in life is not to allow things that are inside of me to die within me when I know that they can go out and help other people. And this mindset that I have came from, you know, kind of all of the things that I've learned in life. And podcasting is just a way for me to get it out there. So the backstory is how I got into podcasting. I started to sing at my church, and I wasn't really that good, even though I'm still singing now at my church, but I wasn't really that good back then. This was like 2006, I think, so a long time ago. And as a result of me wanting to learn how to sing better, I bought a little keyboard and I was practicing the songs that we had to sing by just, playing the single notes with my finger on the keyboard and, banging out single notes just to make sure that I was singing on pitch. Long story short, I learned how to play the piano because of that. Someone saw that. So I was singing, I was playing the piano. Someone saw that and they gifted me a guitar. So I learned how to play the guitar and I was, listening to music and learning how music is composed. And I said to myself, hey, this is simple. Let me start to write some music. And I wrote some songs and I learned how to produce them and record them. Again, with the mindset of like, I don't want this thing that's inside of me to die within me. I need to get it out there to share and be a blessing to other people around me. So I learned how to produce music. I bought all this equipment, microphones, computers, interfaces, all these other things. And I was doing that for a good while, made some music and released it. Over the course of time, I started to evolve in that. And as I continued to grow as a Christian, we had a group. And at this time I was living on my own in my condo. And there was a group of young adults and we got together, just the men. We got together. It was a group called My Brother's Keeper, where we as younger men came and sat down. We were being mentored by older men to teach us, the right things about life and how we should carry ourselves as men. And there was one conversation that we had and it was like so powerful. Like I learned so much from that conversation. And this was in my condo that all of these guys were there and we were all talking and sharing and it was so powerful. And then after everybody was leaving, I was cleaning up my condo, putting the chairs back and stuff. And I said to myself, man, I wish so-and-so were here and this person and that person, they would have learned so much from this conversation. And then right at that moment, I felt like God was saying to me, my eyes just turned straight into my room where all my studio equipment was. And the idea for a podcast started there.
Wow.
And I was just like, I have to do it. I have to start a podcast so
Yeah.
that, because at the very least, I can just summarize what we talked about, record it, and send it out to everybody, right? That was
Yeah.
my mindset at the beginning. And I said, I got to start a podcast, and that's actually the genesis. Now, it didn't start right away after, I made that decision or I had that revelation. But that was kind of like the genesis or the defining moment in my life where I said, you know what, I'm going to get into podcasting for myself.
Very, very cool. I love that way that you came to podcasting and wanting to help other people,
Yeah.
right? Wanting to create a community out of it. And now you do that, right? You do that with your podcast. You started another podcast helping podcasters do the same. When did you start helping other people with their shows?
hmm Well, I was sitting down one day and I was like, I really like podcasting. This is so cool. I wish
Mhm.
I could start another one. And then, I had the idea of starting another podcast and I was like, what should it be about? Like what, because of my music background and the music production background, one of the things that is like my pet peeve is bad audio. I hate it so much.
Yeah. Yeah.
I said to myself, I wanted to start another podcast, but I don't want to interview people who don't understand the importance of having good audio, right?
Right.
I can't even stand hearing podcasts with other people if their audio is like bad. So I said I wanted to start another podcast. And I was thinking to myself, who can I talk to that has the same level of respect for audio that I do, right?
Yeah.
And then the answer to that is podcasters, right? Because they know they're on the other side.
Yeah.
And if they are, producing a good quality podcast, chances are they have good audio. So I said, okay, maybe I should have an interview based podcast where I interview podcasters.
Mhm.
Let's make it happen. Let's do it.
Right.
And I was saying, okay, what name can I call it? And I just, went on Google. The like out of like the heavens, the name I Made a Podcast came into my mind. And I said, okay, if the domain is available, I'm going to do
Yeah.
it. And that's what it's going to be called. I went online, I typed in I Made a Podcast, and I saw the domain available. I bought it right on the spot. And I started moving forward from there. And out of that, I realized that so I can talk to podcasters about podcasting and help them to get better. And from that, and this was totally not the idea when I started, but people's because of what I was doing, people said, "Hey, can you help me start a podcast?" And I was just like, "Yeah, sure." And because I guess it's because of my audio background, I
Mhm.
love editing. I love sitting down looking at the waveform and, cutting things up and making things sound smooth, seamless even, right? And it's one of my sweet spots, my zones of genius. And I said, "Yeah, sure, I can help you. Just, send your audio files. I'll work on it and, give it back to you." And it was at that point, almost at the same time when I started, I made a podcast, that podcast production lab started as well, where I started helping people to create their podcasts. Some of them I actually still have a client to this very day, my very first client, I still have them, where I'm producing their content for them. And also there's been people who came and went where I helped them to launch their podcast,
Mhm.
showed them the ropes, and sent them on their way, and they're still thriving and doing their podcast. Some of them have branched out into like just doing YouTube completely, kind of same as podcasting, but creating content. You're using
Yeah.
the same aspects. You have to have good video, good audio, and you just have to be a little bit more, put a little bit more emphasis on the video and how you look on for YouTube.
Yeah.
But a lot of people have transitioned that I worked with, transitioned to YouTube. But yeah, it's been great, and people have been recommending me, to help them with their podcast because they spoke to someone else who worked with me. It's just been a blast. And yeah, as you mentioned before, this is my studio that I'm in right now.
Yeah.
So people come here and record their content. And again, it's the I think it's the producer in me, the audio technician in me that loves to do all of the setup, run the wires, and make sure everyone's mic is good and all these other things. And I love doing that. So just to be behind the scenes and set that up for people, and then giving the people the opportunity to get what's inside of their heart out so that they can now get that message out to be a blessing, to encourage, to help someone else. Because I think, I can't remember who it was. I think it was Miles Monroe says the most, I hope I don't butcher this quote, but I think he said the most valuable place is the graveyard because there's businesses that weren't able to be started, messages that weren't able to be preached, songs that weren't able to be written. It just died with the people inside of the people, right? And that speaks volumes to me because with everything that I'm doing with podcasts and being able to record content, you're able to put it out there into the world so that it can bless not only the people that are around you, but it can, go across the world. I'm sure, Haley, you may look at your analytics and see the different countries that your podcast
Yeah.
is being
Mhm.
listened to. And it blows my mind. Like some countries that you can't even pronounce maybe are listening to your podcast. And it just blows my mind sometimes when I think about stuff like that there's at least one person's life that I'm impacting in, Mozambique, or Madagascar or in Australia, the other side of the world. It just blows my mind how technology and through podcasting, we can share, this message that's inside of us. Anything that can encourage someone, help someone, just even brighten up someone's day, you know, on the other side of the world, just through podcasting. It's just such a powerful, powerful tool that we have.
I agree. And it links back to your story of how you came to podcasting, right?
Exactly.
Like, I love how you're still on that same mission years and years later. When did you start podcast production? Like, when
Yeah.
for other
So
people?
podcast production labs, that was 2020 three, I think.
Okay.
October 2023.
Okay.
Right,
Congrats.
yeah. Hmm.
Congrats. That's awesome. No, and so balancing all of this, how do you do it, right? Like having two podcasts, running other people's podcasts for them. Like I do the same. And whenever someone asks me how I do it all, I'm like, well, I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. At first I didn't know either, but you know what? One of the things that I realized is boundaries are
Mhm.
very important for the success of anything you do, right? Because like I was sitting back and looking at all of the things that I do. I'll give you a quick rundown, right? So I mentioned before I'm married, right? I have a son. I sing at my church. I also play the bass guitar at my church, and I have a full-time job as well as my
Oh,
podcasting
wow.
business.
Okay. I was gonna
And
ask.
two
Yeah.
I have two podcasts, And I know I'm missing some other things, and I like to hang out with friends and family and
Yeah,
stuff like
social
that.
life, right.
Socialize, right? Take my son to his karate thing,
Mhm.
and do my thing, and I love to read as well. So there's a lot of things going on in my life, and I could say that the only way that I can do everything is by setting very strict boundaries in my life, right? So my full-time job, obviously I need to give time towards that. That takes a big chunk out of my day, but my times are flexible so that I can maybe have my lunch a little bit later, like what I'm doing today to talk with you, right?
Mhm.
Or if I need to listen to someone's podcast that I'm editing, right, I might wake up a little bit earlier, and that's what I do a lot. I wake up like around 5 o'clock a.m. or maybe 5:30, sometimes maybe 6, depending on how tired I am. But I wake up a little bit earlier, do my work to edit, and I then will export it, and then while I'm working, I can actually listen to that work that I did for that person's podcast just to give it a
Okay.
proof listen, and then send it out once it's done. And away I go, and I'm off to doing other things. You see, I've realized that there is a way that you can do kind of two things at once, using the active part of your brain and then the passive part of your brain at the same time. And I utilize that quite a bit where I can't, where I don't need to use, where I don't have the proper bound, where I can't have the boundaries in place, right? So
Totally.
I would cut off time. So cut off time in the morning is like about 7 a.m., right? So at 7 a.m., that's when I stop doing any type of podcast and stuff. And I help my son get ready for school and, all these other things. And then I start my day job at, 9 o'clock or whatever. And throughout the course of the day, I take my little breaks here and there. I might take a 15-minute break to, go take a walk outside. But while I'm walking, I can, have my phone with me and send off an email to a client and come back within 15 minutes and then go back to my day job. And then
Mhm.
during my lunch break as well, right? I usually work from home. So I have a lot of flexibility from that perspective where I can, kind of flip open my other laptop and work on
Sure.
some podcast stuff and
Yeah.
then go back to my day job and, finish my job there. And then in the evening time, I cook dinner for the family because I'm home. And then, in the evening time, I maybe give maybe an hour or something to some other work. But the
Mhm.
key thing is having strict boundaries, right? Even in the evening time, knowing when it's time to go to bed, right? Because if you don't have some strict boundaries around when you go to sleep, your body will absolutely make you pay.
Yes,
If
it
you don't
will.
get enough rest at nighttime, your body will say, you know what, I'm tired now and you can't think, you can't focus, you can't do anything. You're
Yeah,
no good to no one when you're in that
right.
state, right? So I have even strict boundaries of when I, shut things down at the end of the night. And I don't subscribe to this like hustle culture where,
Mhm.
do everything you can. I set very strict boundaries and a priority list. And the top three things on my priority list for that day, that's what I bang out. When I'm finished those three things, then I can go relax and I worry
Yeah.
about the other things the next day. But, I would say boundaries, my priority list, and staying really organized is what causes me to really do all the things that I need to do in my life. Right. And
Yeah,
I kind of look
totally.
at it like I heard someone say it like this, like it's like carrying a bucket of water, right? You just carry everything in that bucket, but if there's something you need to pour out into another bucket, when you're finished with it, you pour it out, but then something else can fill that bucket and you're just
Mhm.
carrying that bucket, hoping that nothing will spill out of that bucket. But as long as you're carrying that bucket and, you work to scoop out whatever water from that bucket and finish it, you're good. But
Yeah,
as long as your bucket is full, right, and nothing overflows, you're good. Right?
that's a great
That's the mindset
analogy.
that I have with regards to everything that I do.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. I really like that. Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense, just, like, compounding the time, taking the time that you need, focusing on, like, what tasks you can do together. Those are all really great tips for
Yeah,
podcasting.
absolutely.
Yeah, like, writing the show notes maybe while you're all those type of things are things that I do
Or
too.
using AI as well.
AI, let's talk about that. How do you
Yeah.
use AI in your business?
Well, I use ChatGPT a lot.
Yeah.
So like when I mean, I feel like I think a lot of people are scared of AI,
Mhm.
but with same thing when they introduced emails, probably like people were like, I can't send a paper letter anymore. I
Yeah,
got to send an email. No, I'm not going to do it. Then nowadays everybody sends email, right?
right.
You got to just find a way to use the technology so that it can benefit you, right? So I would
Yeah.
use So if I think I did this for one of my clients a couple weeks last week. I can't remember which program I used to edit the podcast, but I pulled all of the transcripts
Mhm.
from that podcast and I needed to create a description. So I pulled all the transcripts of everything that was said from that podcast episode that I just finished editing. And I took it and put it into ChatGPT and I said, hey, can you summarize this into an SEO friendly description that I can use for the podcast apps and for YouTube because that's where these two
Yeah.
things were this content was going. And it took that entire transcript, summarized it perfectly, and actually highlighted the keywords that for SEO purposes
Yep.
for me. So I didn't need to actually do that myself. I read it over afterwards and it, looked good to me. I sent it to my client, got the thumbs up from him, and that's it. So it took really no time for me to press a button to export a transcript from an audio file and then to put it into ChatGPT and ask ChatGPT to, kind of summarize it in a description and highlight, some of the keywords so that it can benefit the client. And then, that it takes no time to do that. So,
Yeah, I
problem
agree.
solved. You gotta embrace technology and learn how
Yeah.
to use it to your benefit.
Yeah, I do the same for my clients. I always write show notes, starting with ChatGPT,
Right.
usually editing it because based on their business goals or the episode goals,
Yeah.
sometimes it needs some edits, but it's a great
Tool.
tool to cut
Yep.
down on a ton of time. I remember when I used to manually write all the show notes, and I'm like, do people do that still? I don't know, but
I don't know if people do that still, but if anyone listening right now still uses, still manually writes show
yeah,
notes, I would encourage you to try
I
ChatGPT
agree.
to do that. Just if you can get the transcripts, and put it into ChatGPT
Mhm.
and ask ChatGPT to transcribe it for you because it can make it. It can take
So
so
much
much
easier.
time off. Away, it can give you so much time back just by
Mhm.
using ChatGPT. So yeah,
100%. What do you think about AI for podcast editing?
I love it.
Yeah?
I don't know what I don't know what else I could say, right? But obviously, yeah, you to use it for editing is good, but likewise, if you use ChatGPT to give you like a text-based output, you still got
Yeah.
to give it a listen over just to make sure that things are up to spec. Because
Yeah.
I noticed that there are some programs where if you press a button to edit things out, edit filler words and stuff like that, you still need to listen to it
Yeah.
just to make sure that it didn't, miss listen or mishear something in the context and cut it out type of thing. So AI is good and it has been evolving a lot
Mhm.
over the last, couple years, but you still need to it still needs a human ear to listen to it to just before you give the final seal of
Yeah.
approval to get it out there to the world just to make sure that it didn't mess up. But it is evolving quite a bit where it can again save you a lot of time by using it to edit your podcast.
I agree. Yeah. I use AI for taking out like ums and ahs and things like that.
Yep, filler
But I
words.
still manually edit for all my clients. I just feel like the output is better. And like, yeah, you're saying it is getting better. And I don't know. It's
Hmm.
just maybe one day. But right now, I still go through and like edit it all. But the AI for the ums and ahs has made life a lot easier, I will
Yeah.
say.
I actually, there's a different levels to editing a
Hmm.
podcast. Some people really want a clean, output where there's
Yeah.
no ahs or ums or spaces or anything like that. And I get it, you need to cut that out. But other times, I think if you have like a conversational
Yeah.
podcasts where if people are just talking, sometimes you might hear some ums or some spaces and stuff like that. And it
Right.
might not make sense to edit all of those things out just to make it
Totally.
sound real and authentic. But like I said before, it depending on the type of content that you're editing, the way that you edit it will be different, right? But
Yes.
nonetheless, it will require like a human ear to listen to it just to make sure that it's to the level that it needs to be before the content goes out,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
I agree. And I think one other place that AI is really good for editing too is when you're pulling clips for your
Yes.
podcast. Still, again, I'll use AI to like highlight some moments. I edit them still because I'm just picky. But like, sometimes like they won't pull the right one, or they won't pull like the one that will actually, they pull it based off of sentences and phrases and things like that. But I think for you and I, like knowing what our clients' goals are, it makes it easier for us to pull clips knowing that it will actually help their social media or whatever it is. But what's your approach to clips? Because I know when I was on your podcast, you pulled, I don't, a ton, like maybe five, six,
Mhm.
seven. I'm
Yeah.
not sure.
I actually, so when it comes to clips, I actually, well, for myself, for my podcast,
Yeah.
I do that manually,
Okay.
right? So I know what was said. So when I'm interviewing someone, I usually have a notepad beside me, and I would just make note of the time or,
Hmm.
something they said, because I know that that's something that I want to clip into a short clip, right? So
Sure.
I don't allow AI to do that for me. I do it myself. What I do for my clients, though, I use tools like Headliner,
Yeah.
and Opus Clip, right?
Hmm.
So Headliner, I don't know if they have the ability to edit video podcasts, like video clips. I think they just do audiograms
I
right
think
now.
so. Oh, I
So
haven't used Headliner in so long. That was the first tool I
that
ever
was
used in
that
like
yeah, that's one of the OGs,
2018.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're great.
I've used them for, yeah. I've actually met the one of the founders.
Yeah.
I've spoken to him before. Great guy, and I wrote a article for them, a guest
Nice.
post for them a while back. And those are good people over there at Headliner.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
they are.
and it's a good tool. So I use Headliner for
Hmm.
for my audio only podcast. I use Headliner. Their AI tools, it's pretty robust, and it actually gives you, like, I have an automation set up for most of my clients where it gives you like about 10 different clips from an episode, and I send them all to my clients. I just say, hey, you can pick and choose whichever
Okay.
ones you want to use, and away you go, right? For my video based clients, I sometimes use Opus Clip, but I find with Opus Clip, and there's another one too. It used to be called
Video.
Video.ai, I
Yeah,
think, but they changed their name to something else. With those two apps, I feel like they give you something to start with, but you have to go in and kind of make some adjustments to make sure that the full or at least some of the context of the comment was captured in that clip. And I find that kind of annoying.
I
So
agree.
what I do with my clients who have video based podcasts is I just say, hey, here's the episode, the preview of it. You tell me what you want to clip,
Okay.
right? And I just go out and I just go and do it myself,
Yeah.
right? Now I'm getting to the point where I'm getting kind of busy, and this goes back to like the first question, how I manage everything. I'm actually to the point right now where I might need to hire like some VAs to do things like this, because like I don't want to burn myself out. I love this so much that I don't want to burn myself out, but I want it to continue to grow. And I think things like this where certain clients might want things like manually cut out for their podcasts, I'm going to start to use like a VA to do that. VA means virtual assistant for
Right.
anyone out there who doesn't know, so that they can go in and clip it and edit it and give it back. I know there's a cost to it, but I mean, in the grand scheme of things, I think it's better to do it that way, because I don't want to burn myself out, and I want to make sure that I can still give my client what they ask for. So
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm in a season of growth and expansion with team too, so
wonderful.
we're gonna have to talk about that, offline. But no, I think that yeah, AI has come a long way. So I'm glad that we touched on that because, if you're not using it for your podcast, especially if you're trying to DIY it all, like
Yeah,
there's, people always talk about pod fade or pod burnout, and those are real things that's why most podcasts don't make it past 10 episodes.
exactly.
Use the tools that are at your disposal to make it better and easier for yourself. I think we owe that all to ourselves. But no, I think that's great that we talked about that. And one thing that we talked about before we started recording was seasons. You do seasonal podcasting. Tell me more about that.
Yeah. So, well, at first when I started the Faith Fight podcast, I was just going hard. I think I went straight every single week for maybe like 3 years, like every week a new episode. And I said to myself one time, I was like, you know what, let me just step back for like a summer break. So I stopped that like in like at the end of June, I stopped and I took the summer off and I just relaxed. And I found that that was so good for me just to kind of step back from it and then think about it without having to continually, for lack of a better word, run on the hamster wheel,
Yeah.
and keep it going. I found that that was so good for me just to kind of step back, think about it, and then move forward with whatever new ideas or new strategies that I have and implement them into my podcast. So that's what I did for the Faith Fight podcast. I think maybe about in year 3 or year 4. And ever since then, I've always made sure to take a break. I know last year, so I made a podcast. I started that in 2024, January. And year 1 was, or sorry, the first season went from January to August, and it was great. And I took from September to December kind of off just to step back and think about it, how I will approach it, things I would do differently, things that, worked well. And, I decided to change a few things for season number 2. And likewise, for season number 2, I stepped back at the end of, I think I ended in July, and I stepped back, did some thinking, and I came up. And the thing about it is when you step back out of a thing, you really have time to like think about, new ways that you could make what you're doing better. Right.
Yes.
So I came up with like some really good ideas for season number 3 of I Made a Podcast, which is coming up. And I've been doing, some recordings and some things right now, meeting with some people and working on some things for season number 3, which will be a little bit different than what I did from season number 2. And I'm excited that January when season number 3 starts. A few things that I've done differently. I'm still going to be interviewing podcasters, but I'm going to be a little bit more transparent in how I can actually help podcasters and give more relevant information, more practical, relevant information to help podcasters actually thrive and be good at what they're doing, right? And
Yeah.
show them like the behind the scenes, not only to show them what to do, but why you should do certain things a certain way, right? Because
Yeah.
when you really understand why, it unlocks a different level of understanding and creativity when you can understand why something is done a certain way. So that's
Yeah.
how I'm going to shift. I'm not going to let the cat out of the bag yet. I'm going to encourage everybody to go
Okay.
listen to I Made a Podcast season number 3. And all of this stuff that I'm talking to Haley about right now, you can see for yourself how it will benefit you if you're a podcaster. All right.
Okay. That's so
Sorry, I got to
exciting.
plug myself.
No, plug away. I love it. I love it. No, that's really, really exciting. Well, Chris, this has been fun. I have some rapid fire questions for you, but before
Oh,
we get
man.
into that, do
Okay.
you have anything else you want to chat about? Maybe that I didn't ask you.
Yeah, Haley, you know what? I love the fact that like we're kind of like we are in the same industry
Yeah.
basically, and I'm sure you can relate. Like I mentioned before, I have a day job. My day job has nothing to do with podcasting, but when I get together and speak to other podcasters, as you can see, my face is lit up right now, right?
Yes.
Like Christmas tree, right? I'm happy. I'm
Yes.
I'm in my happy space, right? And I just love this, this thing of podcasting. It just came into my life and it gives me so much peace and contentment. And I just enjoy talking to other podcasters about podcasts. And I'm sure you probably have that same, joy when you interview
I love it.
podcasters.
Yep.
You just feel at peace when you're, doing something that you are good at and you're created to do. So I just wanted to say to you, thank you for having me on. I'm ready for the rapid fire questions. Please
Okay.
don't hurt me though, okay? Please.
I know. I won't. I won't. It'll be really fun. I promise.
Okay, okay.
No, I'm so glad that we, found time to do this. I had so much fun on your podcast. I'll link that in the show notes, but
It was good. Your episode, I didn't look at the analytics, but your
yeah.
episode that you did was really good. I mean, even I learned things from our conversation that I've implemented. I
Oh,
think
amazing.
I just want to share one thing that I remember off the top of my
Yeah.
head. You talked about creating community
Mhm.
podcasters. If you want your podcast to actually grow and be successful and reach more people, you have to build a community. That's one of the things that you shared on my podcast. And that's one of the biggest takeaways. And some of the other people that I've spoken to, some of my clients and people that I've coached, that's one of the key things that I tell them, that if you want your podcast to succeed, you have to make sure you not only record the content and
Yeah.
blast it on social media, you got to
Yeah.
create a place for them to come and talk about it. Create a
Oh,
place for them to communicate about it and build a community surrounding your content. That's one of the things that you shared that actually stuck with me. from our conversation. Like I say about podcasting, it's out there on the interwebs. So anyone out there
Mhm.
can go back and listen to that episode. Yeah, put it in the notes, our conversation, because literally you knocked it out of a park. Knocked it out of the
Well, thank
park.
you.
Little baseball reference here because
Yes,
of, Seattle, Toronto thing, but
yes, the trauma.
the drama, exactly.
I
Yeah.
appreciate that. I
Hmm.
appreciate that. And I'm glad that you found value in that. And I'm glad that you are taking that to your clients. And yeah, community is so important. And
Very
I
important.
mean, it's something that you've talked about in this episode too, right? Just like wanting to bring more people into what you have inside. I think that that in itself is a takeaway for me because that is like, that's what everyone wants, right? No one wants to
Absolutely.
just like keep their inspiration inside of them. We all need a platform to share what
Hmm.
we truly want to share. And sometimes you just have to be bold and do it or
Yep.
find people like us to help you get it out into the world. I find that a lot of people just need some validation when it comes to podcasting, which great. If like I can do that for someone, if I can be like, no, your idea is good, go for it. And that's all they
Exactly.
need.
Make it happen.
Yeah, exactly. So, no, we're always here for the listeners, podcasters, whoever. So, no, I'm glad that we had this convo. But
Yeah.
yes,
It was great.
okay,
Okay.
on to my
Don't
rapid
hurt me.
fire
Don't hurt me.
questions.
Don't hurt me.
So, where is your favorite place to listen to podcasts? Are you an Apple Podcast listener, Spotify listener, somewhere else?
Spotify.
Okay.
Spotify for sure. I used to listen to podcasts on Apple, but over the years they've just changed so many things and I just got frustrated one time and I just like, you know what, forget it. I'm gonna
Yeah,
listen to my podcast on Spotify. So that's where I listen to my podcast.
I agree. I do the same. So, when you're actually listening to the shows, what are you doing? I know you mentioned you go on walks, but what, like, where are you listening?
It could be anywhere.
Okay.
Because I've like I mentioned before, I kind of make the most of whatever I'm doing. So
Mhm.
whether I'm working, if I have time to listen to podcasts, I like to sit down on my desk, work on something and listen to podcasts. Or I do a lot of running. I put on my headphones, I go out and run and I listen to podcasts as well. Or if I'm driving in the car, that's where I like to listen to podcasts as well. So I think those are the top three places that or when I'm cooking or washing dishes or something like that, doing
Yeah,
chores around the house, I like to
yeah,
listen to some podcasts at that time as well. Yeah.
very cool. Do you remember the first podcast you ever listened to?
Oh my gosh. Hmm.
Or the first one that left an impact on you?
Yes, I do. It
Okay,
was the Social Triggers podcast. Do you
okay.
remember that podcast?
No, I don't.
No. Okay, this was a long time ago. Can't even remember his name. I think his name was James Altucher or something like that. I can't even remember his name, but the podcast was called the Social Triggers Podcast. It was a
Mhm.
podcast about marketing and business. And I think that was the very first podcast. It's either that one and or Entrepreneurs on Fire. I think
Mm, yeah.
those are one of the first few around the same time when I got introduced to podcasts. Those are one of the first couple podcasts that I listened to. Yeah.
Okay. I love that. I love that. I'm gonna have to go look up social triggers. I know
Hmm.
it's always interesting to think back of like, the
The
podcast
very
I used to listen to before I ever knew I would get into
Yeah, I
podcasting.
don't think it's an active podcast anymore,
Yeah.
but if you search, you probably can find some old episodes
Okay.
somewhere.
I will. I love that. Do you have any podcasts you recommend everyone listening to? Of course, other than your own.
Whew. Well, you can listen to Employee to Boss. There you
Thank you.
go. That's a good one. Right now, some of the podcasts that I listen to is there's one called Social Proof with David Shands and what's his co-host name? Donnie Wiggins.
Mhm.
That's one that I listen to. They're out of Atlanta. I listen to a lot of sports podcasts. So there's one with Pablo Torre called Pablo Finds Out. I just like his investigative approach to podcasting. I like to listen to that one as well. Let's see. There is a podcast called Strategize Your Life with Pastors Dean and Pastor Jacqueline. I like to listen to their podcast as well. They're actually pastors and they bring a biblical approach to or a biblical approach to mental health
Okay.
and seeing it from the Bible's perspective. And also, I'll give you one more. There's one that it's actually a TV show, but they have a podcast on it. So I don't know if that
Okay.
actually qualifies.
I know it's so hard for me to answer this question too because I listen to so many for my clients each week that like
Yeah.
if I'm to listen outside of my clients, like it is a very specific list.
I got it.
Yeah.
The future with Chris Do.
Okay.
So that's a good podcast as well. I just love the way that he thinks,
Yeah.
and the way that he communicates is very clear. So you can actually learn something from listening to his podcast. So his podcast is called The
Nice.
Future. Yeah, that's another one. I was actually about to listen to it. No, I started to listen to it this morning. A new
Mm,
episode that he just released. So yeah,
very cool. Okay, I'll link some of those in the show notes. That's a
for
great
sure.
list. Okay, I'm excited to hear your answer for this one. Do you have any podcast pet peeves as a listener?
Absolutely. I think I already mentioned to you. You know, I only
Audio.
have one. I only have,
Okay.
it's the only thing that I
Yeah.
hate so much, right? Bad audio.
Yeah.
Like, I can't tell you how much I hate that. Like, even if the conversation is something that is, okay, you know what? I'll give you two things.
Okay.
So, bad audio, I talked about that before.
Right.
The second thing that I hate about, like, podcast, one of my pet peeves is energy,
Yeah.
right? When people get on their podcast, hey, everybody,
Yeah.
my name is Chris, and thanks for joining the podcast.
Right.
Hey, I'm here. Yeah, glad you're here, type of thing, and blah, 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 blah. And you're sitting there and you're like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm going to go to sleep, you
Right.
know?
It's like I have an hour left of this.
Yeah, right. So it's not like you're enjoying it, it's like you're enduring it, right? That you got
Yeah.
to last, this time with them. And energy levels, it's just a matter of being excited about something that you created, really. I
Yeah.
know these are rapid fire, questions. I'm giving you long-winded answers, but like energy levels is something that you could control. So your
Yeah.
energy levels is something that I absolutely hate when people have low energy levels on podcasts.
I agree. And to that point, like I've done this rapid fire with I think I have like 58 episodes out right now. None of them have been fast. We're all podcasters, we're talkers,
We like to
like
talk.
we like to talk. Okay. I have a question I haven't asked anyone before, and I'm curious to ask you. Do you have any pet peeves for when someone comes on your podcast and as a guest?
Yeah, when they have low energy, like
Yeah.
like I try my best, right? Because I understand the
Yeah.
importance of it, right? But like like if I bring someone on my podcast to talk
Mhm.
about them,
Yeah.
right, and what they're working on,
Yeah.
I feel like I shouldn't have to constantly try to feed you energy and feed you excitement to try to get you
Mhm.
excited about what you're talking about.
Yes.
You know? Like this is something that's supposed to be passionate about you. And this is my mindset when I interview anyone on my podcast. Like it's I literally say this is about you.
Yep.
Okay? So whatever it is you want to talk about, it's a blank check. You could talk about it, promote your stuff, talk about your stuff. Whatever causes your face to light up, talk about it. Let's talk about it and have a really good conversation. I'm going to ask you questions and we're going to vibe off each other and we're going to, keep it going. But like as much cuz like if me and you were talking here, if I have energy, you could feel my energy through the microphone, right?
Yeah,
But
for
it's like
sure.
sometimes you're talking to people and you're trying to give them that energy and it's like on the other end there's like they're resisting it. They
Yes.
they just want to kind of, and I get it. Maybe that's their personality or that's their, maybe they're having a really bad day. If that's the case, reschedule.
Yeah, yeah,
If you're not
100%.
excited to talk about what you are
Yeah.
passionate about and what you're doing, hoping that people will listen to or buy what you're selling or whatever, then why do it if you're not passionate about it,
Oh,
excited about
yeah.
it? You know what I mean? So
I
just
agree.
that's my pet
I
peeve. Like
agree.
I want to talk to people who are excited about what they're doing.
Yeah.
And I want to
Me
learn
too.
about it, right? Because I like to learn about stuff like that.
Yep.
And if people are not excited about it, then
Then what are you doing?
what why even try?
Exactly. No, I think that's a really great answer. I mean, I feel the same. Sometimes I'm like, "Hello?" Like,
Exactly. Like, is this mic on? Like,
right? Like, "Is everything good over there?" Like,
yeah.
okay. I just have 2 more questions for you.
Yeah, yeah,
What
sure.
is the best advice that you've ever heard about podcasting?
Hmm. Well, there is it applies to podcasts, but it can apply to other things as well. So and I have like in my home office, I have like some frames up on the wall with like some Bible verses and some quotes and stuff like that. This is one of them. So it goes like this: We are all made creative, and we have to use our creativity to either we could use our creativity to make excuses or make it happen. So make it happen,
Mm.
right? Because if you think about it, I'm sure you've had conversations with people, and they told you something that they wanted to do, and 5 months later, 6 months later, you talk to them again, and they make excuses
Yep.
for it not being done. They use their creativity to make excuses for it not being done, rather than using their creativity to find a way to make it happen. So that applies to podcasting, but it also applies to a lot of things as well.
Yeah. Wow. That's really great advice. I love that. Okay, my last question. What is the most surprising thing that podcasting has taught you about yourself?
Wow, that is a powerful question. And it's something that I have thought about, and I've seen the growth of my answer from that question. The thing that it has taught me about myself is that my voice is powerful.
Mm-hmm.
So when I started podcasting, I, went out there and I thought I was doing good, but I didn't like to hear my voice. And I was like, who wants to hear me? Type of thing, imposter syndrome, right? But over the course of the years, I have like literally found my voice, and I like hearing myself speak, right? Not to sound like conceited or vain or anything like that, but I know that I have value inside of me, and I share what's inside of my heart so that it can be a blessing to help someone else, right? But there has been times where I was feeling, maybe a little bit low or a little bit sad about something or whatever, and I would listen to my own podcast about something that I talked about, and it actually encouraged me. So the one thing that I've learned about podcasting over the years is that my voice is powerful, and I love my voice. It's the only voice I have. I'm not going to change it for nobody. And my voice, when I speak and open my mouth, it has impact to whoever wants to listen to it. And that's what I love about podcasting. That's what I love about my voice.
I love that. Chris, what a great way to end the episode. I've really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you so much for joining me in the Podcast Cafe. For anyone who wants to go and connect with you, learn more about your podcast production offers, or listen to either of your two podcasts or both, where can they find you?
Well, the platform of choice that I usually use is Instagram. So
Okay.
the Faith Fight podcast on Instagram. I made a podcast on Instagram, or Podcast Production Labs on Instagram. I'm sure you're going to have, links down below that people can find that. And, I'm really easy to find. So if you have any comments or questions about our conversation, you can just message me, DM me on one of those apps, and absolutely I'll get back to you. I love connecting with other podcasters. So if any other podcasters are listening to this right now, please, follow and, connect. Let me know some of the insights that you learned from this conversation, or how this, challenged you to get to the next level in your podcast. I would love to hear like that feedback from people. So yeah, that's probably the best way that people can connect with me and, engage with me and talk to me, is through Instagram on those accounts.
Great. I will link all those in the show notes. Chris, thank you so much.
Is it over already?
I know. Can you believe it?
Oh
This was
man,
so
I could
great.
talk to you all day, Haley.
We're going to have to do a part 2 for sure.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much for joining me in the Podcast Cafe. I hope you're leaving with fresh ideas and inspiration to take your podcast to the next level. Remember, podcasting is a journey, and you don't have to do it alone. I'm here to help you every step of the way. Let's connect. Be sure you follow me on Instagram at Espresso Podcast Production, or visit espressopodcastproduction.com for more tips, resources, and behind-the-scenes insights. I'd love to hear about your podcasting journey. If you've enjoyed today's episode, make sure you hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you're feeling extra generous, I'd love it if you could leave me a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It helps more podcasters just like you find the show. Until next time, grab your coffee, keep creating, and I'll see you back here in the Podcast Cafe.